And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Our next story takes us to the state of Louisiana. Live picture there over the New Orleans skyline. Well, we're learning, and I want to put this up from Fox 8, our partners down there, that convicted rapist murderer Jesse Hoffman, 46 years old, was put to death tonight by nitrogen hypoxia. This was Louisiana's first state execution since 2010. And so we wanted to make sure we put this on your radar. And the New York Times says as follows, that almost immediately after taking office last year, Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana pushed through bills that lengthened prison sentences and eliminated parole for most new convictions. And he argued that resuming executions after a long lull would signal the state was serious about cracking down on crime. Well, today the state did just that, the New York Times reports, carrying out its first execution since 2010. It used nitrogen gas, a method that was first used by Alabama last year and that was legalized by Louisiana lawmakers shortly afterward. Back out live to New Orleans. So a press conference just wrapped up. You're going to hear from the Attorney General there in the state of Louisiana and some of these reporters who witnessed the execution there as well. Let's listen.
I have a prepared statement of today's timelines, and then Attorney General Liz Murrow will follow. In accordance with the execution warrant issued by the 22nd Judicial District Court in St. Tammany Parish and the laws of the state of Louisiana, the execution of death row inmate Jesse Hoffman was carried out by nitrogen hypoxia tonight, March 18, 2025, at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. Mr. Hoffman was pronounced deceased by the West Feliciana Parish Coroner's Office at approximately 6:50 p.m. Mr. Hoffman was convicted of first-degree murder of Mary Margaret Molly Elliott on June 25, 1998, and in accordance with the jury recommendation was sentenced to death on September 11, 1998. Beginning at 6:30 a.m. this morning, Mr. Hoffman had visitation with his family, his attorneys, and his spiritual advisor. At approximately 3 o'clock p.m., Mr. Hoffman's visitation with his family concluded, and Mr. Hoffman's attorney was permitted to remain with him till approximately 5:10 p.m. The attorney was allowed to return around 6 p.m. to advise Mr. Hoffman that he was denied relief from the U.S. Supreme Court. Mr. Hoffman's spiritual advisor remained with him the entire time and walked with him into the execution chamber. Mr. Hoffman declined a final meal. At approximately 6:12 p.m., Mr. Hoffman was escorted to the execution chamber, positioned on the gurney, and the mask that delivered the nitrogen was set in place. Mr. Hoffman's spiritual advisor was led into the execution chamber, and a member of the execution team remained inside the execution chamber with the spiritual advisor for security. Individuals from the Louisiana Department of Justice, Louisiana Governor's Office, the St. Tammany Parish District Attorney's Office, along with media representatives from the Advocate/Times-Picayune and WDSU witnessed Mr. Hoffman's execution. At approximately 6:20 p.m., the curtain to the witness chamber opened. Louisiana State Penitentiary Warden Darrell Benoit provided Mr. Hoffman with the opportunity to make a last verbal statement. Mr. Hoffman declined a statement. At approximately 6:20 p.m., Warden Benoit informed the witness that the state would now carry out the execution of condemned inmate Jesse Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman's spiritual advisor remained inside the execution chamber and carried out the previously approved and written plan to assist Mr. Hoffman with the exercise of his spiritual beliefs. Nitrogen gas began to flow at approximately 6:21 p.m. and flowed for approximately 19 minutes. At approximately 6:40 p.m., the curtain to the witness chamber closed, and Mr. Hoffman's spiritual advisor was permitted time to remain in the execution chamber according to the written plan prior to the coroner entering the execution chamber. I believe it was 5 minutes. Subsequently, the curtain to the witness chamber opened, and Warden Benoit informed the witnesses that at approximately 6:50 p.m., the execution of Mr. Hoffman was carried out in accordance with the laws of the state of Louisiana. I'll now turn it over to Attorney General Murrow.
This was Mary Margaret Murphy Elliott. She was known to her friends as Molly. On November 28, 1996, on Thanksgiving Day, a duck hunter found Molly Elliott's naked, dead body abandoned on a makeshift dock where she had been shot in the head execution style after being kidnapped, robbed, terrorized, raped, and marched to this desolate spot for her death. Molly was brutally and mercilessly raped and murdered. She was only 28 years old. That was nearly 30 years ago. Tonight, justice was served for Molly Elliott and for the state of Louisiana. Molly's husband told USA Today, Molly was a cherished person who missed out on motherhood, a promising and successful career, and a life in the country on the property we bought together. Hers was a life that was so full of hope and promise for a beautiful future. The loss of Molly is a scar we will forever carry, and it will never heal. Governor Landry and I made a promise to the citizens of Louisiana and the family members of the victims of these heinous crimes that we would put them first and that we would follow the law. The last execution in Louisiana was in 2010 of Gerald Bordelon, who waived all of his final appeals. Justice has been delayed for these victims and their families for far too long. I, along with my office, remain committed to ensuring that justice is carried out in all the death penalty cases. Jesse Hoffman was convicted and sentenced to death by a jury for his heinous crimes. He received multiple appeals. He received even more appeals and review in the last several days. Now he faces his ultimate judgment before God.
At this time, we'll open it up to questions.
We'll start from the left and go this way.
Can anyone at the prison staff speak to how sort of morale was affected on prison staff among prisoners in the days leading up to the execution?
Can we get Warden Benoit? Warden Benoit, come on up here.
Good evening. Our staff are professionals. Their morale was not affected. You know, I'm sure that they all have their own views, but I'm so proud of my team, my staff. Everyone was so professional. They showed Mr. Hoffman dignity and respect and did their jobs, and I am proud of them. The death row inmates, today they were kind of quiet, but that's to be expected. I've seen that in the past, but no problems, very respectful, just kind of quiet and solemn today.
Were any members of the victim's family in attendance?
They were not, but the governor and I have both been in contact with them, as have people from the district attorney's office in St. Tammany and the detectives who investigated this case from the outset. So they've been in close contact with the family.
Commissioner Warden, any problems that you guys, obviously this is something that's brand new to you guys, using as an execution tool. Is there anything that you ran into, any concerns, any problems with this being carried out for the very first time?
I'll tell you, my staff, as everybody knows, we followed the protocol of Alabama. Again, we let them lead the way and we followed them. We actually probably did a little bit better than they did with some of the equipment we did, and we've made some tweaks to what they did. It was flawless. It went about as good as we can expect. We expected it to be. We had no problems. We are, like the warden said, our staff is trained for this, and it went about as flawless as we could expect it to be. There was nothing that happened that we weren't ready for.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
What is your message to the people outside who are there with the vigils, saying and it's not just for the inmate, but also the victim, but they're saying they want the death penalty
speak to you. Yeah, that's a legislative policy issue, and certainly they are free to advocate and to pray and to continue to support whatever their views are. But this is the law of Louisiana, and we carried out the law of the state of Louisiana.
So you said that you and authorities have been in touch with the family of Molly Elliott, and they were not unanimously in favor of carrying out this execution. So what do you say to the family not in favor of execution in this case as well as other cases going forward? And will you hear the concerns of family members of victims who don't want to see execution?
I can tell you that Molly Elliott's immediate family members did not oppose this moving forward. They are grateful to have finality, and I was in direct communication with them during this process. So, you know, other people might have their opinions, but I don't think it was the opinion of the immediate family members. I think they're grateful to have finality. What was frustrating for them is that it took 30 years.
In the back. So will this execution speed up the process of other inmates who are on death row?
We certainly expect to go back and look at how to make sure that we move these cases along. I've already been looking at that, looking at every case and what the status is of every case. Some of these cases have been sitting for a couple of decades with motions that the defense attorneys, frankly, should have moved forward a long time ago. We'll address those issues as we can, but yes, we expect to move more forward.
Going off of that, since you guys say this is the first successful execution in 15 years, how soon do you expect the next execution, and how many executions are you expecting to be carried out this year?
I couldn't answer that. They're at all different stages in litigation, and because this one did move forward, there have been new filings in a lot of these cases, and we just have to go sort that out in the court. So it's really impossible to say, but my staff, my team, and I really want to compliment all of the lawyers that work together with the district attorney's office in St. Tammany, with my office, really all kind of came together because there were filings in multiple courts for the last few days. And, you know, I think that will continue to happen, but we're going to start working our way through motions and begin to clear the underbrush and move these cases forward. Everybody deserves the justice that the state promised to them in these cases, and I think that it's important for us to be able to move them forward.
A.G. Merle, you've advocated for this policy for a long time. Did you face like the potential of witnessing the execution, and if so, did you wrestle with that?
I certainly had the opportunity to. I sat by a phone because somebody had to sit by the telephone. So I sat and waited by the phone in case there was something that I needed to communicate to the room. My staff was present. There were a number of people who were present, but somebody had to sit by the phone, and so I sat by the phone.
A two-part question. I know that you gave the timeline as to when the lethal gas started flowing and when he was pronounced dead. Did it actually take all 30 minutes for him to die? And also, did he exhibit any visible signs of distress while the execution was being carried out?
My chief of prison operations, Seth Smith, has a medical background, and he's the one that was in the room watching, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Okay, to answer that, and like I said, I have a medical background.
So what is your name, sir?
Seth, S-E-T-H Smith. I've got a degree in nursing, and I practiced and had a license up until 2010, which time I let it lapse. So I was a nurse for over a decade. I've seen a lot of deaths. I was even hospice administrator for some point in time. 6:21, the gas was turned on, the nitrogen was turned on. Around 6:23, he did have some convulsive activity. And I was told he may have had even some fine motor stuff after that I personally didn't see from my angle. Nothing that I would say is consistent with pain, nothing that I would say is inconsistent with death. You know, when the normal dying process, people do things such as agonal respirations. They will raise up, they will do things like that. Just even somebody that's terminal illness with high doses of morphine, things like that in their system. So, you know, he did move. He did shake, very briefly. And when you asked did it take the entire time, our protocol calls for us to go 5 minutes after flatline. And you don't go from a normal rhythm, your heart's beating, everything's hunky-dory, to flatline. You go through various phases where you're dead. You know, we waited till there was no electrical activity in the heart, which took, I want to say 14 minutes, and then we went 5 minutes beyond that. So we went 19 minutes. But he, in essence, was clinically dead very quickly, very quickly. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you're listening there to witnesses of this execution of the prisoner Jesse Hoffman, the first time the state of Louisiana has, one, executed someone since 2010, but also the first time the state used the method of nitrogen hypoxia, a method first used, I believe, both nationally and internationally in Alabama last year here. I want to put this up from Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana, saying this, that in Louisiana, we will always prioritize victims over criminals, law and order over lawlessness, and justice over the status quo, saying if you commit heinous acts of violence in this state, it will cost you your life. Plain and simple. He calls this the fulfillment of the promise of justice for Molly Elliott and her family. The prisoner, Jesse Hoffman, was put to death tonight for the 1996 abduction, rape, and killing of Molly Elliott, who was a 28-year-old advertising executive from New Orleans. And so the method was their nitrogen hypoxia.